Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Good, thanks, Bede. And yourself?
Good, thanks.
What's the topic today?
What we're going to talk about today, or what we're going to go into, is what does it? This whole question of what does it mean to be myself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is an important question because you see, I can say to myself, I'm consciousness, or I'm awareness, or I'm distinct from the mind, sense, body complex. I can say all of those concepts to myself,
Hmm.
but
And talk to other people about it, even on the self or
yeah,
world of
yeah,
self, and
whatever, yeah.
yeah.
But the thing is that what we're talking about here is a recognition of what it means to be ourselves in such a way that we can abide in the appreciation of what that means.
Hmm.
So it's not an intellectual answer. You see, when we do inquiry in Vedanta, it's not rhetorical. What does it mean to be ourselves? Like a philosophical question. And we go, well, basically, we're not the body, we're not the mind, sense, body complex, we are consciousness itself. I've just told you the answer.
Hmm.
That's giving an answer to a rhetorical question.
Hmm.
But the difference is that when Swami Dayananda means seeing the meaning, he means that with this recognition, we can actually appreciate ourselves as ourselves, which is an entirely different thing.
Very different to normally how a teacher-student type relation seems to be, where the teacher asks a question, the student answers back.
Yes, it has nothing to do with that.
Hmm.
So could you speak up a bit too, Kevin?
Yeah.
So what we're looking at here is that we want to go into the question of what does it mean to be ourselves, but it's not first of all an intellectual question. It's actually an inquiry which results in a recognition. And once this recognition has occurred, we can abide in the appreciation of what has been recognized right here, right now, as we are.
Hmm.
Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, the interesting thing is that when we are being ourselves in the sense that Swami Dayananda means it, we are free from any form of psychological suffering. That's the test.
Hmm.
So
if I'm wanting to be and or not feeling.
I can hardly hear you, Kevin.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
So if I'm wanting to be different to what I am, then I'm not really being myself, am I?
If we're being anything, if we're being anything other than ourselves, which is normally what happens, our whole problem actually is that we are being something in the light of the teaching of Vedanta. Our problem is at any one time is that we are being something other than ourself. We're actually being what we are being is not being ourself. We are either being our physical body, as in I am cold, I'm freezing, I'm sick.
Mm.
So our sense of identity is confused with that. Or I'm being my emotional states. I'm unhappy, I'm angry, I'm bored, I'm sad, I'm anxious, I'm empty. All of these are being a person who is one and the same with their emotional states. Or I'm being a thinker, I'm being thinking.
Mm. And where do you place that where, I don't recognize it when I'm doing this, but when it's me as a wanter, and I'm wanting, objects or
Yeah, but I don't want to go so much into me as a wanter. I want to just simply go into the fact that I'm not being myself. You see, you see that the solution to human suffering is the discovery, first of all, of what I really am, as opposed to what I seem to be. And then to being able to abide in the appreciation of what I really am while living. So it's an actual way that, you know, it's what I am being. And the interesting thing about knowledge, in the sense that Swami Dayananda means it, if you know what, you know how. If you know what it means to be yourself, you can be yourself. And that being yourself is being free of suffering, and it's freedom from being something other than yourself. Okay?
Yeah.
So in the light of the teaching, any kind of suffering that I have, any kind of upset or anything that I'm experiencing, it means that I am not being myself. But even though I say that, when we're caught in suffering, that doesn't seem to be that way.
No, we always feel right about how we're thinking or the state we're in. We don't think we're having a delusion or a confusion.
No, we don't. We're not aware of we're having an experience of ourselves that isn't true, but we take it to be true. It's actually a mirage. It's like a dream, actually. And the whole purpose of Vedanta is, the emphasis is to come to a recognition of what does it mean to be myself. And I want to go into looking at what does it mean to be myself in the light of the teaching. This is what Swami Dayananda means when he says, see the meaning. So when we're talking about seeing the meaning, we're talking about a recognition of what is right here, right now, as we are. We're talking about a recognition which enables us to abide in and appreciate ourselves as what has been recognized. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the first thing is that the recognition of what we are in terms of absolutely what we are, the absolute vision of Vedanta, is normally for most people not available. And I include myself in that. That's not available. Okay? But we notice that, you know how we've talked about that when I come into conscious contact with the presence of what is here, the presence of the given, which in Vedanta means to come into conscious contact with God, because the presence of what is given is the presence of God. Immediately, I appreciate myself as conscious.
Yes, I think that's true.
Okay? Because normally we're enclosed in what we've been talking about, subjectivity. We're full of ourself. We're enclosed in ourself. And it's this being enclosed.
We take that to be real, and we think we're being alive to facts when we're actually having identified with our thoughts.
Yes, we actually, it's like when we're looking at a snake. We are absolutely convinced that we are looking at a snake. We're having that experience. In exactly the same way, when our experience of ourself, we take this to be true. Because we're enclosed, we're caught in subjectivity, and it is impossible to get out of subjectivity from that subjectivity. I can say, okay, I'm going to become free. I hate this. I'm going to do something about it. So, and we feel we can get out of subjectivity by doing something, or maybe by thinking something. You know, I can think, well, I'm consciousness, that's what I really am. But if I'm saying that to myself, I'm consciousness, I'm awareness. That's like me sitting in front of the experience of a snake going, there is a rope behind here. Yes, there's a rope. There is a rope. But the only thing that makes the mirage of the snake go away is the presence of the rope comes into my mind and takes up all the room. And that recognition of reality is what releases me from the experience of the snake.
So the cognition of what is.
That's right. Of what really is, as opposed to what seems to be. Okay, and as we've talked about, this beautiful phrase of Swami Dayananda is that we invite Ishvara into our life by being aware of him. Now we have to see, what does he mean by that statement? And what he means by that statement is, if I pause at any one moment and just simply take any object it is, it doesn't matter what it is, and I become aware of the presence of reality in the form of any object, that brings reality into my life. The presence of reality takes up all the room in my mind. It's actually always here, but it's as if it comes in and takes up all the room in my mind. And this is what lifts me out of the subjectivity. But more importantly, there is a shift in my appreciation of myself. This is the most important fact.
Yeah.
Okay?
And that shift is?
Okay, now I want to examine, so when we're talking about self-inquiry, we're not doing an inquiry. We're not looking at ourselves as an angry, confused person and saying, well, yes, let's inquire into what this person is, because that's a mirage. We're only available in this we're only available to this inquiry when we are being a simple conscious person in relationship to Ishvara. Now we're available. We can now inquire into, what does it mean to be myself?
Because it's only when you're being the basic conscious person that you're available for learning, and you're unfettered by binding desires or needing to get something from a...
Yeah, true. But what I'm saying is I don't want to go into so much the binding desires. I'm just wanting to deal with the fact that that when I am being myself as a simple conscious person, I'm available to look at, well, what is the content of this person? What is this person? You see, if I'm depressed and bored, the question of what does it mean to be this bored person? Well, that's not going to work.
No, it's meaningless.
It's because what has to happen, first of all, I have to recognize that I'm in a subjective state. I'm actually cut off from God. So self-inquiry is only possible when I am here as a simple conscious person related to the whole. Okay?
Yep. And that's
so here I am. Sorry?
That's quite a profound statement we've just said.
Yeah, but that's right. Because if I'm depressed and I'm reading a book by Swami Dayananda and it says that I'm the self, that means nothing. I can't learn from a book. Okay?
Yeah.
Once we've understood what God means in the sense that Swami Dayananda says it opens up of what the meaning of God is. This understanding of God brings about an understanding of ourself that's entirely different. We find ourselves resting in the lap of Ishvara, and we find ourselves as an individual, a simple, conscious, non-demanding person who's aware of the presence of what is. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, and we're relaxed in the lap of Ishvara.
Mm.
Okay?
Yep.
And because we're actually abiding in a relaxation that pervades every part of us, we are free from psychological reactions.
Yep.
So we're standing in clear relief of our thoughts, our feelings, and our sensations. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is really a new event in our life.
Can you say that? What did you say? We're standing in relief?
In clear relief. We're appreciating ourselves as distinct from our thoughts. We're not being a thinker. We can have thoughts, but we're not being a thinker.
Yes.
We're not being a feeler, and we're not being a sensor. Even though thoughts, feelings, and sensations are occurring.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The first thing when we say, what does it mean to be ourself, is first of all, is that we are free from friction. And you see, and this is something we can examine for ourselves. You see, the whole point of Vedanta is we use Vedanta to examine ourselves in the light of the teaching, to see what does it mean to be myself. Well, one of the first meanings is that we are being peaceful. We're not in friction. We're not pushing against something. We're not pushing against the order. So here we are being ourselves. Thoughts, sensations, feelings may be coming and going, but we are being ourselves, and there's no friction, there's no resistance, there's no in the very being of ourself, there is no psychological resistance to the fact of what is.
So we're being accepting, receiving, but we're not trying to be accepting, receiving.
No.
Like we're not doing accepting, receiving.
No.
Which is a mistake. That's trying to do this is all to do with knowledge and cognition of what is, and it's not to do with that trying to do accepting or trying to do receiving is operating from subjectivity.
It's not possible to do understanding in the sense that Swami Dayananda means it. When I open my eyes, I can't help but see what's there. So the way our traditional teachers put it is that a fire can't help but be hot. When you're being yourself, you can't help but be accepting.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that we can knowingly shift into the appreciation of ourself as accepting. And when we are being this way, we by default are freed from psychological resistance or pushback. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the first one. So one of the meanings of what does it mean to be myself? To be myself is to be peaceful. Is that good or is that good?
I think it's life-changing, life-transforming.
Yeah. The being yourself is the transformation. Okay, and then we're talking at the level of just simply being ourselves as a conscious person. But when we understand what it means to be peaceful as an individual, when a traditional teacher points out to us that this person that we are, and we are aware of ourselves as a conscious person, and we're aware of ourselves as being peaceful, and they say, you actually are peace itself, then it won't sound remote, far away. Swami Dayananda, in fact, says you must be able to appreciate yourself as peaceful before you can own up to yourself as peace itself. Now, I'm not going into that, but that's the direction we're taking. Okay?
Yep.
We're at the adjective stage. I'm peaceful as an individual. Okay, now, second thing. So what does it mean to be myself? It means to be at home with being what I am. Now get this. It means being at home with what I am. Now, and feeling secure in being that, not chopping and changing. Now, it's very interesting here. One of the major, the all-pervasive psychological problem we all have is a deep sense of insecurity. We know how we're chopping and changing from different things. I'm happy one moment, I'm sad the next moment, I'm daydreaming the next moment, I'm angry the next moment, I'm annoyed, chopping and changing. And also we have a strong desire to be something different from what we are, because what we are is very unpleasant.
Or uncomfortable.
But unpleasant. We don't like it.
We usually don't recognize that focus. We just think, oh, we're wanting to do this, but we actually want to do something because we're not feeling okay in ourselves.
Swami Dayananda says the only thing only reason that we desire to be happy is because we're not happy. We're not happy already. Profound statement.
And that doesn't seem to be recognized in normal social, cultural. It's not.
No, it doesn't.
It's completely blind to that.
Yes. Swami Dayananda says our basic problem is we can't stand ourselves. Okay. Now, that is an existential condition. It's a way of being in the world. I hate being myself. Now, how am I to resolve this? I hate being myself. I can say to myself, well, actually, I'm actually okay. I'm really acceptable. I'm consciousness. I'm awareness. That's not going to cut it. The only thing, there's many forms of self-dissatisfaction. Every form of psychological misery is a form of self-dissatisfaction. That is the common denominator. So when I am being at home with myself, by being myself, the desire to be something different in order to make myself happy is no longer there.
No.
This is the absolute significance, if you like, psychological significance, the importance that to be myself in the way that Swami Dayananda means it is to be liberated from this compulsive, relentless striving to find happiness somewhere else.
Yes.
So, and it's a very simple thing that when we, for example, appreciate the presence of Ishvara, in fact, the moment we actually are aware of Ishvara, we're aware of ourselves. That goes just without saying. But we're aware of ourselves in a new way. We're at home with ourselves. We're at home with ourselves. And this has an extraordinary significance. So you see, we have to see the meaning. We have to, when he says see the meaning, he means to recognize that to be ourselves is to be at home with ourselves. And within that very recognition, we are at home with ourselves. If we're not at home with ourselves, we haven't recognized what he's talking about.
No, I think that's true.
When Swami Dayananda talks about knowledge, it in itself is transformative. If that transformation is not occurring, it is not knowledge. So Vedanta has nothing to do with a conceptual construct that I take in. Okay?
That seems to be a common mistake, isn't it? But that it happens where things it's just taken as information or concepts.
What the way Swami Dayananda puts it is that a conceptual construct, yes. You see, when he talks, it's not, he's using words as a mirror in which you can see yourself in an entirely different way. He's not presenting a concept for you to accept or disagree with.
It comes back to what you said earlier, that basic conscious person, non-demanding person, is the learning person.
That person is capable of being able to study Vedanta. Only myself as that can study Vedanta.
Yes, I think that's the point.
Okay? And that's why we cannot bypass Ishvara. Unless I know what God is in the sense that Swami Dayananda means it, we might as well pack up and go home. Okay? Because we're not being ourselves, and if we're not being ourselves, we'll distort anything that we hear.
Yes.
Okay? So, here we are, we're at home with ourselves, and this liberates us, whereas being peaceful liberates us from psychological resistance to facts and reactivity. Being at home with ourselves neutralizes this demandingness to some experience so I can feel happy in myself. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, to be myself is to be secure. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Isn't it interesting that even though everything in the world is chopping and changing, the presence of reality remains very stable. It doesn't come and go. It's never shaken. Okay? That's why when we come into conscious contact with God, we feel very secure. We're not chopping and changing. So when we look at what it means to be myself, it means to be secure in two senses. We're not chopping and changing mentally. We're not becoming one thing, then another thing, then another thing, then another thing. We are stable. And also, when we're being secure, we're liberated from fear.
That's a big one.
Oh, huge. Huge. So, you see, it's very important to understand the value of the value of being myself. Because when we discover the value of it, what happens is when we discover the value of it, we can't help but psychologically tend towards it. Our minds naturally tend towards what is good.
And when you start to experience this being available and appreciating it, in the appreciation or abiding in what it means to be a basic conscious person, you start seeing the value of it, and only then you actually realise you won't really understand subjectivity until you know what objectivity is.
No, until you know what it means to be yourself, you won't really recognize when you're not being yourself.
No.
Because we're so used to not being ourselves. This new appreciation of ourselves as a conscious person that comes about from understanding what Ishvara is, that's the starting point, because then we can go, okay, here I am, I'm this conscious person. Let's examine what this means in terms of Vedanta. What does it mean to be myself? The whole inquiry as to what does it mean to be myself becomes open to me once I am a simple conscious person related to the whole. Not before. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, next thing. Here we are. We're resting in the lap of Ishvara. We can also come to recognize something else. My goodness. When I am being myself, I am being free. In other words, the way I am being is not being determined by the presence or absence of what is happening.
Because normally we're determined by the changing circumstances.
That's the experience, yes. We're not actually, but someone says something we don't like, we become upset. We're not doing something they would like to do, so we feel bored. You see, there's no, that's why Freud was right. The way we normally are is completely determined there is no freedom,
Mm-hmm.
because there's feeling high and there's feeling low, but there is no being free. Most of us feel in the confusion, we feel that feeling good about ourselves is freedom.
Yes, because it's such a relief from the other.
Yes, but it's not freedom. It's ego satisfaction. And it's just simply the flip side. It's actually the self-dissatisfaction in another form. But being free, you see, being free doesn't change. It's not dependent upon what's happening in my mind, what other people are doing, or the circumstances I am in. So it's very important to ponder, to examine this for ourselves, and we go, my goodness, here I am, I'm resting in the lap of Ishvara, and I notice that I'm being free. You see, when we talk about inquiry, we're looking at examining what's here in the light of the teaching, which is what we're doing kind of now. Okay, so that's extremely important. Now, were you going to say something?
Oh, so far we've got markers for being myself are that I'm peaceful, not in friction.
Yep.
Is number one. Number two is that I'm being at home with myself, secure in myself.
Yep.
And number three is that I'm free. I'm not being determined by circumstances.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And this being myself is what they mean by sat. You know, the Sanskrit term sat, being.
Yeah.
So I'm being. You know, I'm not being. Why this is important is when I am being, I'm not being an object that I can look at. So when I'm being myself, I am free from self-objectification. Now, when you think about it, you know, when you feel lonely, you've got an idea of yourself as an individual who is isolated. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you're taking yourself to be this person.
Yeah.
This thing that you can look at. You've become a somebody an identity who is lonely. That's self-objectification, isn't it?
Yes. And
irrespective of, even if you know this intellectually, the fact of the matter is that's not going to get rid of the loneliness. You know what I mean? I can say, well, okay, but the fact of the matter is I can know all about even self-objectification, but it's still not going to free me from loneliness. Only being myself frees me from self-objectification. Because when I'm lonely, I feel I am that. It's hypnotic. I feel I am lonely. Or I might be a bit impressed with myself. I might feel that I'm quite a smart guy. I might feel like I'm pretty wise. And I'm looking at myself as an object. And this object that I'm taking myself to be, which they call in the tradition self-objectification, I can be seeing, I can describe it, think about it, and I can see it with my senses, can't I? I'm here. I can see it. But when I am being, that's not the case, is it?
No.
I can only appreciate myself because when I'm being, when I'm being myself, that's not an object.
Well, I think my teacher said that being yourself, it's indescribable.
Yeah.
There's not. It's
non-conceivable. Can't think about it.
Yeah.
And not perceivable, can't be seen with the senses.
No.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if I can describe myself and I'm feeling a bit inflated about my wonderful virtues, I'm dreaming. I'm not being myself. if there's any form of self-objectification, and self-objectification manifests as ego inflation to various degrees or ego deflation to various degrees.
In subjectivity, what is thought to be happiness is really only ego inflation and deflation.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the game. In subjectivity, the only thing I've got is trying to feel good about myself, to have experiences where I can momentarily forget my misery.
So in subjectivity, I don't know what happiness is. I don't know that I don't know happiness. I don't know I need to know what happiness is.
We're completely oblivious to that. We don't know the meaning of what it means to be happy. We don't know that meaning means to be myself. To be happy is to be myself. So when we talk about recognition of happiness, happiness is not an object. It is being myself.
Being full.
Yeah, I'm going to go into that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay? Now, so are we clear that when we are being ourselves, we are released from all forms of self-objectification, making ourselves into where we're experiencing ourselves as a somebody?
Yes, I think that's, yeah.
Who is either ego inflated, I'm just so magnificent, I can't believe myself, or I'm such a low life, I'm worth nothing.
No. But importantly, it doesn't mean that there aren't unpleasant situations or things that I don't like that will occur.
No. We're not, because we can recognize when I'm cold that this is unpleasant, but I haven't become my sense of identity, my sense of myself is not I am cold.
No.
Okay?
Yeah. So
absolutely. Good point.
It's like my children when they're having an argument or fighting amongst themselves. I don't find it pleasant, but it doesn't annoy me like it might used to.
Yes.
There's a certain order there, and I can help moderate some of the behaviour, but they're not available for help at the moment.
No, but the main point is there's a difference between not liking something and a binding desire that my children should act the way that I want them to. Because when that's binding, when they don't, I will find myself being disturbed, which in Vedanta, any form of psychological suffering is I'm not being myself.
No.
Okay, this is the whole point.
Yes.
You know, all roads lead to Rome, you know. Now, there's another very interesting point. You see, when I become aware of Ishvara, the presence of Ishvara in the form of what is here, I find myself being aware. Now, I'm not doing awareness.
No. That seems to be a popular notion, but doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not doing awareness. What it is and Swami Dayananda has a beautiful phrase, I'm being myself. I'm awake to the moment by being myself. I'm not in the now. Okay? Yeah. I'm not in the now. Okay? I'm being present. But the present is consciousness, Swami Dayananda says. But the moment that I'm facing is not now. That's the now moment. It's the moment I'm facing. So I'm awake to the moment by being myself.
So this is quite different from doing mindfulness.
Mindfulness as generally understood it. As generally understood, yes. Okay, so the key to Vedanta is this appreciation of what does it mean to be myself. And you see, the way we see is the way we be. If I'm seeing myself as this simple conscious person, I am being a simple conscious person.
And Swami Dayananda, in the book Action Reaction, he praises this simple conscious person, and he says that you need to become very familiar with this simple, basic conscious person.
In fact, he called it the supreme action.
And he says, and what we normally take to be ourselves is this personality of we like to. And he says that's all. That's the center of reactivity and subjectivity. In fact,
what he highlights in that book is this amazing thing that everything that we're doing, if I'm looking at a tree, that I'm a looker. It's a role. Or if I'm walking, I'm a walker. Or if I'm a husband, I'm a husband. You know, I mean, those are roles. But he said when you become the roles, that's the problem. Because then you've got self-objectification. If I think that I'm a walker walking down the road, as opposed to abiding in the appreciation of myself as a simple conscious person who's walking down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm seeing myself as a walker, as an object that's moving along the road. So that's right. So when we're talking about, so you see, so when we're looking at sat, we're talking about being. The whole point is being. And then to be myself is to be aware. I can't improve on awareness. It's not something that develops. No. But what does develop is this. Once we understand what we are, this can become more and more clear. So you see, the most important thing is that when we're abiding in the appreciation of being ourselves, we're not going from one point to another point. The becoming is always, I'm this, I want to become that.
Or I'm this and I want to get that.
Yes, this is why when we talk about the appreciation of the presence of Ishvara, or even the appreciation of the presence of ourself, it's just simply abiding in the appreciation of what is. It's a shift from striving, going from one point to another point, to right here, right now, as I am, I appreciate what is. There's no becoming in this. There's no one day I'm going to get this. That's not possible.
No.
Any form of becoming is an error, a huge error in Vedanta. Because what we're doing is, the whole point is that we're looking at knowledge. Can you remind me when I get to the end of this sort of point to mention what is a wise man? Could you remind me of that?
Yeah.
Okay, now. So, sat, being, chit, awareness. So to be ourselves is to be aware. Now, it's a common experience in the West, at least, is that we feel empty and bored. We feel we're lacking stimulation.
I think from the number of people I see on iPhones habitually in restaurants or...
Yeah. So what happens is, in this situation, any form of sensory experience becomes an inordinate value, like sex, drugs, entertainment, all of these things, anything that will excite me, because the feeling of emptiness and boredom is, in the West, for example, all pervasive, normally speaking.
Yeah.
Now,
we won't admit that. We don't recognize it.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, that's right. It's not like anything. It's not seen.
Yeah.
My problem is that life isn't exciting enough, as far as I'm concerned. You see, when we're bored, we say we're sitting in the bus stop. We're bored. We think it's because the bus hasn't arrived. But we are bored.
We are being bored.
We're being boring. The problem is centered on us. Now, it's an interesting thing. And this compulsion towards exciting experiences, and it's a compulsion, it's extremely strong, is only released when we are being ourselves, because to be ourselves is also to be full. This is the Satchitananda thing. Now, when I say being full, We're not being any particular thing.
No.
What it is, it's a very wide fullness. It includes everything. It's not being anything. It's limitless. In other words, it hasn't got limits. As soon as you describe something, it's got limits, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm describing myself. I'm bored. I'm limiting myself to this feeling of boredom, or anger, or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you're being yourself, the limitation thing is gone. Limitlessness does not mean huge. That's a mistake. It means without limitation. And just simply being myself is to be full. Does that make sense? So what we're looking at here is the importance of what does it mean to be myself? When I'm actually being myself, I'm being full. I'm not being limited by any particular thing. Notion. No. I'm sad. I'm lonely. I'm bored. I'm this, that, and the other thing. So to be myself liberates me from the compulsion for stimulating and exciting sensory experiences. And it frees me from the emptiness and boredom that is so prevalent within the West.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we can see that the solution is only one solution. And the solution has nothing to do with I'm this, I'm going to become that as a solution.
People see that as a solution when they get what they want. They think they've solved that problem. But
without understanding what happiness is, or without understanding what God is, that there's no choice in that. Now, this is the interesting reason. This is the very interesting thing that what Swami Dayananda means, that a life of karma yoga frees us from binding desires. Now, let's just have a look at the structure of this. Here I am. I'm bored and empty. And then I'm passionately interested in things like sex or entertainment or drugs. Okay? Because that solves the problem. Now, the only thing that neutralizes the force, the pressure of those binding desires is the discovery of myself as full. The appreciation of myself as being full. You can't just, because you know all about binding desires, suddenly they go away.
No.
If I feel non-acceptable, okay, which is a common thing, I feel inadequate, I don't approve of myself, I will have a binding passion for people to approve of me. It doesn't matter what I say or do. I can say, well, I don't care what people think. Lie. Okay?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that until I find the summum bonum, the supreme good of man, which is, first of all, the reality of God. If I don't discover what happiness is, if I don't discover what it means to be without limits, in other words, without self-objectification, without description, being full is not available to me. If I don't know what it means to be myself, I can't be full. Okay? And I'm not going to, I might understand what it means to be a conscious person, and I might understand that, yes, when I'm being this way, I feel full. But I've got to really see the meaning of what it means to be myself, which is the whole point of Vedanta, to bring about a recognition of what it means to be myself. A recognition.
And this is where this recognition is the recognition of what is God, as Swami Dayananda means.
The initial there's first of all a recognition of ourselves as a conscious person. The different how Puja Swamiji puts it is there is first of all ourselves as a conscious person, then ourselves as consciousness itself. You see, when we start to examine ourselves as a conscious person, we go, it's very interesting. Here, when we look at any experience, and I don't want to go too much into this, but we look at any experience. Here we are, there is the presence of reality in the form of all the colors. So this awareness that is here, which is me, is in the form of table, Kevin, sights and sound. When I'm appreciating myself as that, there is no duality, is there?
No.
There is just awareness in the form of trees and cars and people and things. But you're not going to be able to recognize yourself in this light unless you know what it means to be a conscious person.
No.
Okay.
And people, you mentioned something earlier about intellectual understanding or so-called intellectual understanding. Swami Dayananda always dismissed it. He said, there's no intellectual understanding, you either cognize what is or not.
Yes. Well, first of all, how he understood the intellect was actually seeing what is. He wasn't referring to calculative thinking. You see, interpretation. If I read a book and I go, oh, yeah, this sounds pretty good, what Swami Dayananda is saying, I'm awareness and I'm the self. Whoop-de-dee-doo-dee-dum. There's no liberation in that because there's no appreciation of myself as being full and being able to abide in that appreciation while living. Now, lastly, what I want to close with.
What it is to be a wise man.
The whole purpose of Vedanta is not to become all-knowing or all-powerful. He was very strong on that. He said, the first thing I want to do is cure you from spiritual romanticism. He said, he defined and showed clearly what a wise man is in the last chapter of the last portion of the second chapter in the Bhagavad Gita home study course. To be a wise person is to be happy with yourself by virtue of what you are. By being yourself, being at home with yourself without any external supports. He says, this is being wise. So when we talk about living the wisdom, we mean being ourselves while living. This is the whole game of Vedanta. There is no other game. This is not a philosophical thing.
No.
When you're being yourself, it's very substantial. When you're being yourself as a conscious person, it is radically different from when you're caught up in daydreams, when you're reacting, when you're struggling and striving to be happy. So this whole idea is living the wisdom. So, but the main thing I wanted just simply to deal with is that when we go into this inquiry, what does it mean to be ourselves? We need to dwell on this in the light of the teaching. And so here we are, we're just simply sitting quietly by ourselves. You know, what he says, we've pulled ourselves together because we've brought our mind to what we're doing. Here I am, I'm sitting here. And then what I'm doing is I'm sitting here with this attitude of graceful acceptance or being resting in the lap of Ishvara. I can now begin to inquire, okay, here I am. What does it mean? Here I am, I'm here. What is this me, this conscious person who is here? What does it mean to be myself? And then we can inquire into this in the light of the teaching, and we can notice and recognize, oh my goodness, to be myself means to be peaceful. to be myself also means to be secure. Ah, to be myself means to be at home with myself. Ah, to be myself means to be full. Ah, to be myself means to be aware. We can become we can see the meaning of what it means to be ourselves. Once we see the meaning, we can be what we've seen, what we've recognized. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like what Swami Dayananda says, we can only see what we know.
Yeah.
And what he means by know is a recognition of what actually is. Because that opens the door. Admittedly, we now have to live that wisdom to be established in it. But we're not practicing a spiritual practice to become aware or to become wise. Once we understand to a greater or lesser extent what being wise means, we then can live that wisdom in our daily life.
And what you mean by live, you mean is what we're doing and what we're doing in our life.
Well,
in our life.
When we appreciate ourselves as a simple, conscious, non-demanding person resting in the lap of Ishvara, which is an attitude.
Yeah.
When we pull ourselves together, in other words, we bring our attention to what we're actually doing, and then what we're doing, we then just simply do what we're doing with that attitude. Like this morning, I woke up and I was lying in bed. And then I just simply pulled myself together. In other words, I brought my mind to what I was doing. So I'm no longer split between a thinker and a doer. And then I just simply abide in this attitude while I was lying in bed. I've now converted the action of lying in bed into a yoga. In other words, I am living the wisdom. I am living in Ishvara's world. And so it's not a theoretical thing. So we're not trying to become wise. We have to first of all appreciate what does it mean to be wise. And for Swami Dayananda, to be wise is to be ourself. To be free is to be ourself. And then the whole purpose of Vedanta in the fullest sense of the word is to be free while living, which is the definition of moksha. Okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Bede.
Okay, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye.